find myself on this topic of flat freaking Earth of all things. I mean, I had a lot of other little side projects going on between the publishing of Archon and recently getting involved with this. But in April of this year, I happened to listen to Mark Sargent's interview with, he was on Canary Cry with Basil and Gons on Canary Cry Radio. And I thought it was a joke. It was April 13th. I was heading down to do my taxes, and it was my accountant's an hour and a half away. So I was looking for something that a podcast to listen to on my drive. And I saw that, and I thought, cause this was like April 13th and it had already been recorded. So I thought, maybe this is an April Fool's joke, flat Earth, whatever. So I listened to this thing for an hour and a half driving down to do my taxes. And at first, I'm rolling my eyes like everybody else. But then by the end of it, I'm going, well, shoot, that guy kind of made a little bit of sense, So I did my taxes and I got back in the car. I said, I got to listen to that again. So I listened to it again on my drive home, and I thought, man, I'm going to look this guy up. So I watched all of his, I think he had 11 parts of the Flat Earth Clues videos at that time. Watched them all and reached out because he put his phone number at the end of every video. I said, boy, this guy's, he's kind of gutsy. So I called him up and asked him if he'd be on my radio show. So he came on my show that week. It was all very quick. So it was like, I listened to it, I think it was on Monday, and had him on my show on Wednesday. And I listened at that time when I was talking to him. If you heard the show I did with him, I was saying, hey, I still very much believe in the spinning heliocentric globe. I believe in the expanding Earth model that Neil Adams talks about, and had just did a teaching on it back in December. As a matter of fact, that was something I kept saying throughout the episode. I still very much believe this, but what you're saying is really interesting. Tell me more. And when I got off that interview, I thought, man, I can't let this go. I've got to look into this. And the first thing I did was look into the pictures, because he challenged me. He said, hey, go ahead and see if you can prove the globe, but do so without using the word NASA or the military or the government, because that's where most of our sources for the globe come from. Well, at first I had the thought that everybody else has. We've all seen the pictures, but those pictures come from NASA, the military, and the government. But I'm going to look into it anyway. So as I start looking into those pictures and realizing they are either questionable at best, when you see the Apollo 11 footage of the astronauts faking the globular shape of the Earth through a round window in their spacecraft, that gives you a real big red flag going, what's up with that, and then you don't really get a picture of the Earth until the Apollo 17 famous one that we've all seen. And then Matt Boylan comes out and he's like, that's a painting. And so, I'm looking at it, I'm an artist, I'm a painter, not quite as good as some of these guys like Matt Boylan is. I mean, he's very photorealistic with his artwork. But I'm questioning it now, and then you look at all the other blue marbles that they put out, and they are, if you read the fine print, they're telling you these are composite images. This is artwork. And when you look into the composite images, they're not even good composite images. They're very bad composite images. I'm a Photoshop guy. I live in Photoshop. Almost every day I'm doing something in Photoshop. I can show you, and have shown people, the clone, where they're using the clone tool to replicate clouds. This cloud is exactly the same as this cloud. These 5 clouds are exactly the same as this one, and showing you they're using the Photoshop clone tool. And you're like, well, wait a minute. You're telling us we're taking pictures of Pluto. We've taken pictures of Jupiter and Saturn, supposedly massively huge planets, way bigger than ours. And yet we have to have cartoon artwork and bad composite Photoshop images of our world? Really? Then you start seeing videos, allegedly shot time-lapse videos from satellites showing the Earth in rotation. In one case, 25 hours of time-lapse rotation, and the clouds aren't changing. You're like, and some people say, well, they really are. You just got to get a higher resolution. And I've looked at the higher resolution one, which I question because I don't even think they had that ability in 1990. So it looks like somebody just redid it. But even still, the amount of movement that you were seeing is negligible for 25 hours. Set a camera up outside for an hour and then speed it up in your computer and see how much cloud movement you get. So I began to question all of it. And that was the first thing I did. The second thing I did, I'm a Bible-believing Christian, so the first thing I should have done would have been to consult the scriptures. It was actually the second thing I did. When I did that, though, I was done, because at this point, you cannot get, and I tried, you cannot get a spinning heliocentric globe out of the scriptures. You get the exact opposite. You get a circular, fixed, stationary world set on pillars under a dome within which the sun, moon, and stars were placed on day 4. And I've taught creation science type stuff for years. I used to teach. It was sort of my own spin-off version of Kent Hovind's material, combined with a little bit from Henry Morris and Carl Baugh and some of these other big guys in the creation world. And we always had this model. Carl Baugh, I think, was the originator of it, and Kent Hovind certainly talked about it a lot, of the canopy theory, that the globe was covered with basically an ice canopy, and that was the firmament. I taught that as recently as December of last year. But when you go back and look at it, because all of us approach the text with preconceived biases from things that we've been told. And when I decided, okay, I'm going to look into the scriptures, but do so with the mentality that I have never heard about a globe. I've never heard anything about the earth as a ball. So I'm going to come to the text as freshly as I can come to it, as freshly as possible, without preconceived notions and biases, and just let the text say what it says. What would I get out of it? And I didn't get very far. Genesis chapter 1, and it tells you that on day 4 he put the sun, moon, and stars in the firmament, not outside and around it. And I'm going, how did I miss that? I have read that. I can't tell you how many times I've read that. I can tell you how many times I've taught that. I can't tell you how many times I've depicted it in PowerPoint presentations and stuff. Yet there it is. Sun, moon, and stars in the firmament. And then when you realize Job predates Genesis, Job was written before Genesis, Job goes into even more detail. And then you read what Solomon had to say about it. And you read what all these guys had to say. And you finally get to Isaiah. And he's the one everybody wants to quote, Isaiah 40:22, the circle of the earth. Well, and especially if you're a King James only type, and God bless the guys that are out there. I've been around you my whole life. I understand your arguments. I don't happen to agree with you, but I understand their arguments. But if you're a King James only guy, welcome to the Flat Earth Society, because man, you can't get around it. And Isaiah is the only guy that used the word ball. The problem is he didn't use it in chapter 40, verse 22. He used it in chapter 22, verse 18. He says, I'll throw you like a ball. And if you look up the Hebrew word for that, it's dur. The Hebrew word ball, dur. The Hebrew word that he used for circle is chug. So he knew the difference in Hebrew, and we should know the difference in English. And apparently the King James translators did, because they translated dur as ball in 22:18 and chug as circle in 40:22.